Hey guys, Missing Pixel here. Welcome to Delisted, a show where I take a look at old mobile games that are no longer available for purchase and cannot be natively run on modern phones. Today, we'll be looking at 3 different games under the Fast and Furious franchise from the developer Firemint. As a quick background to who Firemint were, they were a developer from Melbourne, who produced games from 2004 to 2012, before merging with another mobile game developer named Iron Monkey. While the Fast and Furious franchise has had mobile games previously, Fugitive is the first game to be released by Firemint. Here's the quick synopsis of the story. Brian is in pursuit to catch Don. However, because Brian owed him a ride, he let Don go. The police aren't happy about this, and after Brian rebels against the police and hands in his badge, the police try to catch him. We travel across 4 states to escape the police, while stopping to do some errands in each state. By the end, Brian finds himself working with the task force to catch Veron, and gets let in back to the task force. The game has 2 formats within. In each state, you get around 10 to 15 minutes of the story to play through. However, the payments you receive within the story mode aren't enough to leave the state, so you must do some races separately. The extra earnings from the races also help you to purchase customizations for your car in the form of a paint job, bodywork, vinyl wraps and spoilers. I was not expecting this sort of customizability within a Java game, I have to say. While we don't get to choose which car we drive, you receive a new car in each state, though this is mostly cosmetic, as all the cars drive the same and are about as quick as one another. Within the story mode, you'll find yourself doing races, driving to a destination before the timer runs out, allow the DVD cover game mode in Underground 2, destroying opponents' cars or police cars before the timer runs out, as well as having to evade opponents or police before they destroy you. We see a damage indicator. If all components become red, it's game over. The 4 maps are different in the types of roads that you drive and the buildings that you pass, but the worlds themselves remind me of Underground 2 on the GBA, in the sense that the buildings are all the same height and are attached to one another in a semi-continuous line. It's not visually impressive compared to what's to come, but for what it's worth, at least the game is semi-open world. When you are not racing, you have free reign on where to drive. While the textures repeat a lot, you have to keep in mind that the game is less than a megabyte in size, and the textures are all very smooth, unlike the upcoming games. And we have a pretty fun stunt and crash camera too. I would say that the races are all pretty fair in terms of difficulty, but the evading missions kind of suck, since you can fib the opponent into crashing, just to see them respawn right in front of you. Still, the levels aren't all too challenging, and I did have fun playing this game, but it only gets better from here on out. Fast and Furious Pink Slip was released a year after Fugitive, in 2008. There isn't really a story mode in this one, and actually has very little to do with Fast and Furious. Or at least I don't think it does. I haven't watched the movies past Tokyo Drift, with the exception of 7, so I missed most of the family talk.
It's me, Dom. I'm looking for my family, my father, Harrison.
We have 4 sets of difficulty levels, resulting in 16 different races you have to complete. The types of game modes consist of a circuit race, drag race, drift race, and police escape. Unlike Fugitive, we get to pick which car we want to drive, with each car having different properties that makes it more suited for the game mode. We then get to pick which car we want to challenge. As the name suggests, you fight for pink slips. If the opponent wins, you lose your car, and if you beat your opponent, you win his car. Since you have multiple opponents to challenge, you can replay the same race to get all the pink slips, and there are 32 cars in total that you can win. The cars are split into different classes too, such as exotic, muscle, and import. Some cars don't have a NOS boost, so you have to be mindful that you are definitely picking the right car for the job. And you do lose the ability to customize the cars like in Fugitive. There are only 3 maps in Pink Slip, which are Miami, LA, and Tokyo. The maps are no longer open world either, which means that for the cop chases, you are essentially having to do another race, so the game does get a little repetitive. Though there's only 16 races that you have to do, so the game is once again rather quick to beat. The maps, however, are much better visually than Fugitive. The buildings are no longer in a single line, and instead they're nicely sprinkled throughout. This, paired with the level design, makes the game feel more like a console title. In Fugitive, I almost never had to use the brakes, while here we get long stretches of road, tight corners, big jumps and even shortcuts they can take. And there's more set dressing, so to speak, with lampposts and trees that once again help to make the world feel more real. Though it does come at expense of frame rate, and things only get worse on Java in the next title that I'll be looking at, though this is the first Fast and Furious game by Firemint to also be released on iOS. The games are identical in content between the versions, however having a much more powerful platform to develop on, Firemint were able to add slightly more detail into the maps and into the assets themselves. While the iOS version is rather blurry, running at what I presume is 320x480, in terms of graphics, I'd say it looks quite close to the 3DS in quality, which is impressive for a game that came out 3 years before the 3DS did. The Java version is still impressive though, looking like a PS1 title, though this framerate is at its best being emulated on a modern device. If your mobile phone supported OpenGL but didn't have a dedicated GPU, these are the frame rates you'd be looking at instead. Anyway, that was a long ramble about graphics. Let's get back to the game modes. Races and cop chases are all very similar to Fugitive, though NOS now replenishes itself as you drive. Races are a bit more cheap than in Fugitive, with opponents randomly getting rubber banded at excessive speeds, but I think that's just there to mask how dumb they are. It's not even worth restarting a race if you're losing sometimes, because on occasion, the opponents will slow down to a crawl before the finish line. Drag races are mostly a cinematic cutscene, as in all you have to do is shift the gears at the right time, and use NOS. You don't have to steer at all. And the drifts? Oh, I love the drifts. Because we get a towed track to race on, the gameplay does remind me of Need for Speed Carbon. If you're emulating the Java version of a controller, these are pathetically easy, but at the same time, ultra satisfying to keep that combo going. You see, as long as you keep drifting, your combo keeps going up. If you hit anything, you lose the combo. But you don't lose the overall score if you recover quick enough. When playing on a mobile keypad though, the drifts do get far more challenging because you cannot do fine controls. And on iOS, we have to use dreaded tilt controls, which are even more difficult to wrap your head around. Tilt too much and your car spins out. Don't tilt enough and you'll crash into a barrier and lose your combo. But with how light and small phones were back then, this layout still makes more sense than having a big steering wheel on your screen for what it's worth. This is a really fun game, and while it is overall quite short, I had a blast replaying it 3 times for this video. Even if you cannot get your hands on the iOS version, the Java one is worth playing through. The final game that I will be looking at today is just called Fast and Furious. It was released a year after Pink Slip in 2009, and it's the final of the Fast and Furious games produced by Firemint. This game essentially combines the story mode elements of Fugitive with the gameplay of Pink Slip, resulting in a perfect mix of the two. The first mission has us destroy 3 trucks carrying gas tankers. If you crash out, you have a countdown before the mission fails. This is where we can really see the Java version start to struggle, as not only is the frame rate low, but my car had managed to crash and spin into the air quite a few times for seemingly no reason. But still, you have to give the developers props for the parity between the two versions, even having the same cutscenes. Each mission and event has a score system ranked by you using nitro, by the jumps you do, by the overtakes, etc. As well as this, you can also win best time awards, and awards for things such as performing huge jumps and landing them. There are minor gameplay changes too, such as the ability to brake on iOS by tapping anywhere on screen, more impressive visuals compared to Pink Slip, picking the Pink Slip opponent first, not having to do the Pink Slip if you already collected all the cars in that race, there being a new chart for car specifications, tilt controls being more reactive, with your car going to a drift around corners, plus more. Oh, the next mission was a bit of a chore. It's a drag race, but you're in a tunnel with multiple exits, one which is blocked off. On Java, you have to press the number key that is flashed up on screen before your car crashes into the barrier, while on iOS you have to play a game of Simon Says, which is far easier. But hey, QTEs, how modern. After you do the main mission in each stage, you have some of the familiar race modes that you must complete, such as races, drifts and drag races. I quite like how this is done. It's similar to Fugitive in that each stage has you race on the same track. But because these are all completely different game modes, I don't mind having to replay the same track over and over because it still feels fresh. There are 9 stages, and each has a different number of events. It's also impressive that some stages have multiple routes that you can take, instead of just having shortcuts like in Pink Slip, making the worlds feel more real. It's not just linear circuit racing, it actually feels like you're exploring a city. This is also helped by the new game mode, where you have to get to the checkpoints on time. This is where the multiple routes are most utilized, as you have to use the GPS to make sure that you are taking the fastest route. Lastly, there are goals that you have to complete within each stage, like having a combo drift for example. Otherwise, there's not much more for me to say without repeating what I already said about the first 2 games. This is a definitive must play, it's very fun. And that is all the Firemint Fast and Furious games. They were a blast to play, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching me review them. Please let me know what you think of this series so far, and I hope you hit subscribe to see more. See you for the next one.